welcome back to my channel, Manga Hoarder. My name is Laura, and today I am wrapping up my March Read Manga 19 challenge. So this is the challenge that I posed for the full year of 52 prompts, and I'm randomly selecting the prompts at the beginning of the month and then trying to read to them. So I did have a TBR for this, but I pretty much didn't stick to this at all. I did accomplish a lot of the challenges, but I didn't stick to the TBR. So I was supposed to read a 2019 release. I was going to read Badass Babes and didn't. The next prompt was a female lead. I was going to read Cheeky Angel and didn't. A title set in space. I was going to read Captain Ken. I didn't actually do this one at all. Hardcover. I was going to read A Single Match and didn't. And short stories, I was going to read a title called Sophagie and didn't. I also have 2 alphabets that I had chosen, so I'm also working on bonus prompts where I'm trying to read a title that starts with every single letter of the alphabet this year, and in March I had chosen O and X. I was going to read X by Clamp, and I was going to read Omukai Des by Mecha Tanaka. I read the O, but I did not read the X, so I'm just going to go through, I'm going to talk about these titles that I have read, almost none of which were what I had originally planned. So starting off, let's do the alphabet. So the first title is X-Kai by Sami Tojo. When I was making the video, I had forgotten that we had this title because it wasn't on the shelf, and the only other titles on the shelf were both by Clamp, which are Holic, which starts with XXX, or X, or X1999, depending on how it is on the cover. So this is the third title that we had. This is X-Kai. It's a 2-volume long series. It actually reminds me of another Clamp series, which is Legal Drug. I'm not sure that the plot or anything are at all alike, but there's something about it that has a similar feel to me. It is basically the story about a character who is an assassin sort of by night, and a florist by day. He works in a flower shop, and his calling card, basically when he kills someone, is to leave a flower with the murder scene. In this story, sort of right at the beginning, he ends up adopting a boy who I believe might be, is he mute? I can't remember. It's been over 2 months now since I've read this, so it's been a while. And this boy sort of, he starts to kind of take care of this child. And throughout the series, I think he's sort of thinking about what it means to be an assassin, or part of this working class of assassins, and what it means to sort of take care of this child. I think that's what this is. It was obviously not super memorable. I remember, being entertained by it, but because it's quite short, it really doesn't develop the characters very much. So it's really just sort of a scenario that has left in my mind. But it was fine. It was a fine title, and I have fulfilled my X category. I'm going to keep going with the titles that I really just don't remember what they're about, and then leave the ones where I can talk about it to the end. The next one is Othello. I read this for the letter O, as well as it was my pick for something from the closet, and I genuinely cannot tell you what this is about, except for that it's a series of short stories. And this is the main problem that I have with BL manga, is that I cannot remember them. There just isn't, for the most part, except for some of the longer running series, there isn't enough going on in these titles. There isn't enough creative, artistically, for me to have any sort of triggers to my memory. I even was flipping through this, trying to figure out, like, what is this about? And without rereading it, I do not see anything in it that triggers a memory. So this is just gone. It's gone from my memory. So this is by Toei Hasumi, and that's genuinely all I can say about it, except for that I did read it because I wrote it down in my book. But if I had picked this up, not knowing the title, I'm sure that as I was reading it, it wouldn't trigger a single memory for me. So unfortunately, that's just what happens. BL, for the most part, it just seems very average. It follows a formula. for the most part, and it has a very characteristic style, and so unless it really kind of goes outside of the mold somehow, I just cannot remember them, particularly almost 3 months later. The other title that I don't remember almost at all, but I know that when I was reading it, I also felt like this is not going to be memorable, is my 2019 title. This just came out this year. That's Love in Focus by Yoko Nogiri. This is the same author as That Wolf Boy Is Mine, which is a pretty good reverse harem series, I think. You know, it's nice, short and sweet. This one is about a girl who has an interest in photography. Someone around her has died, and she meets some boys, and one of them doesn't want their picture taken. One of them is trying to encourage her to do something. That's how much I remember, because I flipped through some of the pages. Again, a title that was just very not memorable, but this one, at least, I know that I will have more memories of in the future, because as I continue to buy it, every time that I start reading to catch up, I will read this first volume, and so I'll have a chance to read it multiple times, whereas with BL manga, especially ones that are one-shots or collections of short stories, I'm not necessarily going to go and pick that one back up just because I can't remember it. You know, it's usually titles like this where I'm going to read the first volume again because I want to remind myself before I read the next volume. So what I remember about this is that it seemed pretty average. It wasn't super memorable. It felt like a cliche shoujo manga, which isn't a bad thing. It just means that it wasn't going to stick in my memory. But I also remember thinking that I'll probably buy a few more volumes of the series. You know, I had nothing against it. It was probably just a fine average title. The next one that I read, this is for the letter O, is Omukai Desu by Mecha Tanaka. What I remember about this is that I don't think this was a romance title. I don't think there's any romance in this. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that I might be not wrong. This is a shoujo manga, and the main character is actually a boy. He can see spirits, and he kind of comes into contact with two sort of shinigami, or one shinigami and his apprentice. The regular shinigami is often dressed up as a rabbit, and then the apprentice is like looks like maybe like 13, 14-year-old girl who often is also dressing up in character costumes, and they help spirits go back to heaven or go to the underworld or wherever they're taking them. So this boy gets sort of hired on to help out because he also is able to see spirits, even though he is a human boy, and he is just sort of helps them out. So that's basically all this is. It generally is just sort of scenarios, very short stories, mostly comedy. I don't think there was a giant overarching plot, and I don't think that there was any romance, so it doesn't really feel like a typical shoujo manga. However, it does feel like typical Mecha Tanaka, because she just writes crazy, weird, bizarre, super innocent, happy, cheerful stories. I always like to pick up her titles, and I always will pick up her titles, even if they are completely average, which they generally are, but I just really, really like her. So for my hardcover title, I picked up The Boxman by Imiri Sakabashira. I did talk about this in a wrap-up. I can't remember, Otaku-a-thon maybe? I will have it linked up in the cards, so you can check it out if you want. And because I had talked about it just after reading it, I probably will have more coherent thoughts than 3 months after reading it. But this one I read many times, because it is so weird that you really, it begs to be read. So this is basically the story of a man who is traveling. I think I could show this one. He's traveling here. Where is he? Here with a box. And sort of a kappa/cat creature. He's traveling with a box, and he's going through various different sort of pop culture references. He's traveling through all these really strange landscapes. He is coming across, you know, pop culture figures, icons, monsters. It is a wordless comic. It is just sort of this journey as he travels across, and then gets to the very end. So it was already very strange and weird and absurd, and then the end just amps that up so much that when I was reading it, I literally just sat there for 5 minutes and reread the 2 bubbles of dialogue over and over and over, then flipped back to the front and started reading it again because it begs to be reread, because that ending is so mind-blowing or confounding. I wanted to figure it out. So I've read it a few times, or flipped through it a few times, and got into this ending, and it's just, every time, I can't believe this ending. It's so strange. This is definitely a very alternative comic. It is not an easy one to figure out, to grasp, but I think there's a lot of interesting things going on. The art in it is actually quite great. It is a whole lot of fun if you don't mind not understanding. And I really wouldn't recommend it unless you are already a fairly established alternative comics reader. I think that's sort of the best reader of this, but I had a whole lot of fun reading this. It was so weird. The last 2 that I read, so the next one that I read is The Name of the Flower by Ken Saito. This is one of my favorite shoujo manga. I think I probably have it. It's in my top 10. I know that this is not a title for everyone, though. There are a lot of things that I think will turn off a lot of regular readers off, but I just really, really love this manga. It is basically the story of a young girl who her parents have been in a car accident, and she has been sort of sent to all of her different family to live with them, but they just cannot handle her because she is just catatonic. She cannot do anything. She is so incredibly depressed. She's grieving, and they just don't know how to deal with her, and so she is sent to the last place, like the last resort family member who is sort of an uncle of hers, a young uncle, and he takes her in, and he is also has a lot of problems, but his problems lie in more that he is kind of an angry person. He has a lot of personal hurt. He has a lot of social interaction problems. He doesn't want to be around other people, and so he takes her in, but he is very gruff with her and abrupt with her, and basically says, you know, if you want to stay here, then I want you to take care of the garden. And she takes to the garden, as the garden, which has been at this point kind of left to its own devices, is now starting to look like something, and she's been working on it, and it has been kind of turning into something. As it is healing, as it has been improving, she herself is starting to heal through this process of gardening. And then as she, of course, is starting to become sort of more whole and starting to get through her grieving process, he, this young uncle person, also is sort of getting through his own personal problems, seeing this transformation in these other areas. And so it's sort of a domino effect that is happening in this story. Of course, there is a romance between these 2 characters. It is a age gap romance, as well as the fact that they are slightly related. So that would be probably where most people will have an issue with it. He also is quite gruff with her. I think that might not go over really well, but I do really like sort of the overall kind of theme of this grieving process, and I really, really like the way that in itself is handled. Now, both these main characters are kind of gloomy to begin with, so there are a number of characters that are introduced fairly quickly who are light and airy and add a lot of levity and joy and life to the series, which help out a lot, because otherwise this would be a really depressing story. So I just really like this one. It's only 4 volumes long. It is out of print from CMX, but it's a title I like. That one I read for my out of print title. And then the last one that I read for the month was Wandering Island by Kenji Tsuruta. And this one, there's only 2 volumes out so far. It is not complete. I think we're expecting more volumes of it. And it is feels like a grown-up version of Castle in the Sky. I think that's the best sort of explanation I have for it, just the atmosphere of it, the way it is illustrated, sort of the feeling of the characters. It is very slow and sweet and melodic. Again, a title about grief. This one in particular is about this young woman here on the cover. She has a business where she delivers packages from island to island. She's in this area in the ocean where there's lots of little neighboring islands. So she helps deliver packages. And she co-owns this business with her grandfather, who has recently passed away, and so of course she is now going through the grieving process. Her grandfather has had a hobby these many years of looking for this wandering island, this island of legend, which is supposedly just kind of floats by their sort of area, floats by the islands in the nearby area, and he has been looking for it because it's just sort of this legendary island. Maybe he saw it in the past, and so he's been kind of tracking it and looking for it. And so she decides, I think part of her grieving process is to complete his work on this island, and so she starts to look for the island, and big spoilers, she finds this island. I think she actually finds it fairly quickly, and it's really great what she ends up discovering there, how she explores it, what is going on, and then at the very end there's such a cliffhanger that I'm chomping at the bit for volume 3. I cannot wait to read volume 3 to see where this story goes. I am loving this title so far. Really happy about it. I think before volume 3 comes out though, there is another Kenji Tsuruta which will be released in English called Emanon, or No Name, I think, backwards. So I'm really looking forward to that. I will definitely be picking up that title because this one is so good, so great. I'm really happy about this title so far. So yeah, the art in it is lovely too. So here's some of this character. It really just sort of is quiet and lonely, just like you would have expected in Castle in the Sky. Same kind of thing is going on, I think. Anyway, that's everything that I read in the month of March. More videos are coming. Let me know though, do you forget the manga that you're reading? It's been almost 3 months since I read some of these, and if they're just sort of kind of average reads or cliche reads, I just cannot remember them. I don't have the great memory that I used to have, so I'm really curious, am I alone in this? Should I be worried? Or do you also struggle to remember manga after you've read them couple months ago? Let me know about that down below. Anyway, I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.